Hey, folks, welcome to the Battles of the First World War podcast. Joining us on the podcast this afternoon are Eric and Tom Langie, father and son, and authors of Henri Langie, from War Volunteer in World War I to Honorary Major in World War II. Okay, so a little bit about Eric and Tom. So Eric is the grandson of Henri Langie and knew him until he was 17 years of age. During his final years, Henri lived in Eric's childhood home in the military town Leopoldsburg, where Eric's father was active in the army at the time as a major medic. During his youth, Eric grew up with the stories told by his father and grandfather, and Eric studied musicology and archaeology at the University of Leuven and produced lots of concerts and music recordings. Very cool. And Tom is the great-grandson of Henri Langie. He has had a keen interest in World War I and World War II since a young age. It was probably passed down from father to son, and the fact that both his grandfathers were in the military, and also playing a lot of shooter games online and watching war movies has probably helped expand the interest. Yeah, same here. In his daily occupation, Tom is an entrepreneur who's passionate about tech and innovation. And having worked for more than 8 years at Tesla, he now runs his own software company in the e-mobility industry. Also very cool. Wow. All right. Okay, so to start off, I came away from your book like feeling such a connection to Henri. And I have to say, it was especially the 1969 photograph of him and Leontine, his wife. My God. They are, they're clearly older. They've been married for decades, but they looked so deeply in love and happy in each other's company. And in that photograph, I was just so moved by it. And what an extraordinary life Henri had. Although, two big parts of it were not by choice. And of course, these two parts are World War I and World War II. So let's just get right into the conversation. But first, Eric and Tom, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
It's our honor.
Thanks for the invitation, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys would tell us about your interest in the Great War and how it is remembered today in Belgium.
Well, let me start by saying that since I knew my grandfather, Henri, till I was 17 years old, I was triggered by his stories. And I passed them on to my son. And it took years to gather all the information. And then Tom took off, but I still kept involved, being interested in everything that had to do with the two world wars that my grandfather told me so much about. And then when we found all the diaries and the letters, and like you say, the love between my grandfather and my grandmother, you can find it in his letters, in his diary, starting from the early 1914 until the day he dies.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and I think we're both based in Belgium. We are from Belgium, and of course, a big part of the Great War happened in Belgium, although the front was very stretched over many countries.
Right.
But the story of our great grandfather and grandfather, and also in general, the history that still lives in Belgium, everybody has a connection to the Great War in Belgium. And we have so many, musea and sites, cemeteries and bunkers, and the landscape is still filled with scars from the First War.
Right.
And yeah, it keeps living in Belgium. Like, for example, in Bruges, in Ypres, you have the Menin Gate, where still each night at 8 p.m. The last post is played, and it will continue to be played. And yeah, the end of the First World War, so 11th of November, is still a national holiday in Belgium, which is very nice. But something that my father and I find odd is that the end of the Second World War is not a national holiday or not remembered.
Yeah.
But that's another topic. But the Great War, it's remembered.
Our government decided to combine both end of both wars into one date,
right?
The 11th of November, and we think that's a bit of a pity. Normally, we should celebrate the 2 days, and
that's
not only
interesting.
one war.
Yeah. We here in the United States. So part of the reason I wanted to ask this question, how is the war remembered in Belgium today is because it's for the American audience, as you mentioned, like the front line ran right through Belgium, and almost all of Belgium was occupied by the Germans during World War I, and then a great deal of the fighting took place there. So that I wanted to see, like, how is that imprinted in Belgian memory, because it has a much deeper meaning than it necessarily will here in the U.S., which the war was across the ocean, and we were involved in it for a year and a half, but Belgium was in it from the very beginning to the very end. In fact, the war, the front line stops in halfway through Belgium in November. So,
well, in fact, Belgium, when you look at it now, when it even wasn't called Belgium, this place where we live now, and during the First and Second World War, was always the place where all the battles took place in Europe. It was all Napoleon was defeated in Belgium, and I can keep telling stories like that from the Middle Ages until the end of the Second World War. Belgium was always the fighting spot.
Right. That's you bring to memory. I've read of Belgium being described as the bloody cockpit of Europe. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never heard that expression, but it fits.
It makes sense. Yeah, but the Great War, like in the schools in Belgium, it's still taught extensively, and especially like the schools that are closer to Ypres and the front line and the Ypres salient, they do quite some activities around the war. Like cleaning some of the graves, for example, or making poetry, patronizing graves. There's still quite some activities going on, but I think the key there, and it's good that the schools are doing it, is to keep the youth involved and interested, because otherwise it will slowly bleed out, and then there will be no memory anymore, which is a shame, right?
Right, exactly. And then we forget how terrible it was, and how expensive it was in terms of lives and hopes and futures shattered. So yeah, absolutely. I have to bring to attention the fact that while Henri passed on several decades ago, he is with us in spirit, because for folks watching the YouTube video, the uniform behind Eric and Tom, that is Henri's actual uniform that the family has kept. That's incredible. That is a first here on the podcast. That's so cool. Thank you for going to get it.
Yeah, because in our wine cellar, we have a little museum about him, because he left us so much artifacts. Even when I was a little child, like 12 years old, at his villa at the coast side in Belgium, he had a cellar where he taught me how to make airplanes and whatever. And he handed me a book about grenades. He was a specialist in grenades. And he said, "Oh, you must read this. And here are some old grenades." So he gave me dismantled grenades.
Yeah, sure.
So I still got them.
That's
And
so
but
cool.
later on, I will tell a story about what he did with a bag of grenades.
Yeah.
But we left so much stuff that we cherish, and that when we do lectures all over the country in schools for associations, musea, we always take some boxes with us, and people can't believe their eyes. Like, dude, you still have the boots from the Second World War?
Yeah.
Everyone throws it away, and
Right.
he did everything.
Yeah, and some stuff is more than 100 years old that we still
Right.
have.
God, that's amazing. That's fantastic. In fact, Eric, this next question, this is perfect. It leads us in here. So, if you would like, tell us about Henri. So, and I have the question here. Obviously, it sounds like he did, but did Kleine Bompa, little grandfather, did he speak of the Great War often? And of course, I know you mentioned that he did in the book as well.
Well, he did, but more about the Great War, the First World War, than the Second World War. And I think it was because of the fact that, yeah, when the Second World War started, it took 18 days for the Germans to take all of Belgium.
Right.
And my grandfather had to flee, let's say, with the whole army to France to
Mhm.
build a new army. Then he was captured as a prisoner of war and was sent to several prisoner of war camps.
Right.
So the fact that he didn't tell me so much about the Second World War, I think it was like he felt a bit guilty that he couldn't have done so much during the Second World War than
Interesting.
the heroic deeds that he did in the First World War.
Mhm.
It's really a lot. And
In the First World War, it was incredible what of heroic deeds he did, and
Yes.
yeah, well, he told me lots of stories about that period, but not so much of what happened afterwards. Like my son discovered lots of letters and stuff regarding the founding of elite regiment, like the special forces, but then it
Mhm.
was called the Ardennes Hunters.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, we found some pictures. We met some people, and they told us, look, your grandfather was one of the founders of the Ardennes Hunters, who were so important during the Second World War. So to answer your question, he told me a lot about the First World War, not so much of the period afterwards, but yeah, it was made up by everything we found in the diaries and the journals and the letters.
yeah, and I think what's interesting, at least my father told me, is that even though he spoke about the Great War and had a lot of experiences that he lived through, he did not really show harsh truth. So
Yeah.
he
Right.
kind of
Right.
sugarcoated it quite
Yes.
a lot, especially since I think you were like 10, 15 years old, so
Yeah.
a young boy. He didn't want to be too brutal, but afterwards, when we found the reality and were reading his notebooks day after day, it showed that the reality was pretty
Yeah.
brutal and different, and that he was a very tough guy. But it was never he never showed it. Unfortunately, I never knew him, which is a shame. But as you mentioned, right after reading the book and reading all his documents, you really can have a connection with him and a
Yeah.
good understanding of what he was like. So to me, he sounded like a very nice, amicable man,
Very humble.
very humble, loved by his men, not necessarily wanting to be in the picture all the time, which is a little bit of a Belgian trait. You know, we're quite in the background. We're not very present, but
Not loud.
yeah, he lived through it. But one thing that I really noticed a lot, which is very similar, I think, to the American audience, is that he was a very devoted Christian. So
Okay.
through his
Yes.
faith, he really found a lot of strength. When he had leave during the Great War, he often visited Lourdes in France to pray at the Holy Cave. So you can find really he drew a lot of strength from being a Christian, and it gave him good guiding principles, which he set really a great example by those principles and by his character. And I at least tried to capture some of that in the book, and I think everybody can identify himself a little bit with that and see it as a source of inspiration or guidance.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So I have here, your Henri, he obviously lived quite a life. And of course, the reason is rather obvious, like why would you want to memorialize his life in a book? I mean, that's obvious. I mean, look at everything that happened in his life. But what else inspired you to take on this project of a biography of Henri?
Yeah, good question. It was quite a lot of work looking back to it. I don't think I will write a book ever again, but this time I was happy I did.
Maybe about me.
Yeah. But it started, I think, like more than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. Actually, in this room here, in this home office, I was studying for my exams. And as a break, I would watch a Band of Brothers episode. And my father's, I was talking about Band of Brothers with my dad, and he was like, yeah, actually, my grandfather, he also had quite an interesting life. He was buried alive once, and then they told his parents that he died, but 2 years later, when he had leave, he could go home, and they were so surprised that he was still alive. I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. After I finished my exams, I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into it, and then the journey started. We visited together the museum in Brussels, where there's also the archives of all the soldiers, all the military records are there. That already gave us a bit of a rough outline of all his mutations.
About 500 pages.
Really, his personal file.
Copy.
It was really a lot.
It was a very big archive that they kept for my grandfather there.
Yeah, so that's where we started, and then we had a really rough outline of which regiments, where he was, but not a lot of details. I would say pretty factual information. But my father knew from when he was young that Henri had a lot of pictures, and there supposedly were also diaries. But we did not have them anywhere. So we only had the 500 pages of the archive.
Okay.
So we started looking around and asking around in the family, like, are these journals somewhere? We went to my grandfather's, Henri's son's house to search there. We went to his other son's house to search there, but we really couldn't find them. So I started on the book, and then it remained on the back burner for a couple of years until when they sold one of the houses of the wife of one of Henri's sons, Roger. Then we found everything, all the medals you see here, all the journals, a lot of pictures, documents.
Letters.
Many letters from when he was a prisoner of war. And then we had more details. And the thing that's very interesting is that from 1917, so during First World War I, until 1977, for 60 years, he wrote a diary and he filled it out every single day. So
he did, didn't he? I mean, in the book, I mean, he is, even very, like right up until the moment that he passed away, like within just a few days. Yes,
2 days before he passed away. And another interesting story is that in one of the first diaries was also a story that he told me, but I couldn't believe it. And he said, well, as soon as I went to the Ypres salient, I was peeing against a tree and a bullet hit the tree right next to my head. So I dug down, waited for a couple of hours, took out my knife, and I took out the bullet and I put it in my wallet, and it was my lucky charm.
Mm-hmm.
So he kept it during the war, we thought. But in 1977, when he died, we found his wallet, and the bullet was still in there.
Whoa,
So we still got it.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is incredible. That's amazing. Wow. Wow. So
Yeah, so with all those stuff, that we found and all that information, we were able to start forming more detailed.
yeah. Did it help? Did you so I know you two gentlemen were involved. Did this project like help bring the family together and as far as like finding things and relating more
Yeah,
stories?
good. Especially with my niece, so the daughter of Roger, the
Okay.
eldest son of Henri. Um, yeah, they also had access to the old villa, and there we found a lot of stuff as well. He had his desk in the corner of a room, so we looked in all the drawers and we found some stuff. And then the villa was sold, so the desk had to go. And
Right.
then at the back of the desk were other drawers where we found other diaries. So it was really, spannend, hoe zeggen ze dat?
Yeah, it was exciting, and
Thrilling, yeah.
and it was nice indeed, because we have quite a large family and we live all across Belgium. It's not that we
Okay.
are all in one province or something. So asking around and then finding things and sharing some of the stories that we read in the diaries, and finding birth certificates and wedding certificates and things
Yeah.
like that. Definitely, it brings the family a bit closer together.
And Henri was also a collector. I just found a box with all the death certificates and birth certificates from our family, starting from 1585.
Whoa.
So 1585 until the birth of Tom, his son. So that's quite a history.
Wow. So Henri was a historian himself, like very, very, very
Something
history
completely
conscious.
else, but that defines his character is that in 1948 he bought a Chevrolet Fleetmaster, Stylemaster,
Mhm.
an American car, a Chevrolet, and it was with plated iron,
Armored steel.
armored steel.
Wow.
Yeah, they still had some left. They put it on a Chevrolet. And he drove with that car from 1948 till 1971. And now comes the strange thing. From the first kilometers that he drove, he wrote every kilometer where he went,
Really?
when he started, when he arrived there, who was with him in the car. And that from 1948 till 1971. And I still have those books where he writes that he went to Lourdes, to the
Yeah.
to the seaside, to Vielsalm, and so we.
Oh,
That's
wow. That's incredible.
an old-timer book.
He must have been constantly writing.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I can understand that. Like, can understand. This is a bit off topic, but I recently read an article about how writing can it can help like rewire your brain, especially if you've suffered trauma or something like that. The process can help take the load off, and in fact, that may likely apply to Henri as well. Many of the things he saw, perhaps
so.
writing was a therapeutic process for him.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, amazing. So I have here, like, we've already discussed it here, but my question was it was going to be the process of working on the biography, but we've talked about that. But I do see something here. You were talking about a big black box, but day by day. It was, so you guys just had the outline of things, but you start to fill in the details. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I think like the process of getting the eventual biography together and learning stuff as we went along, it was very interesting. And given the fact that he wrote everything down, the challenge was not so much after we found the big archive. It was not so much to find out a lot of information. The challenge was to filter the information
Yes.
have a book of only 250 pages, not 2,500 pages,
Right.
because I
Right.
can easily write a book that's 4 times as big as this one.
Right.
So that was a challenge. But of course, the flip side is that there's very rich detail. You very much understand where he was, what he was doing. And to me, at least, that's what kept me going. Is that reading through the documents and having the framework from the museum or the archive in Brussels, it allowed me to fill in those blanks with his personal day-to-day writings and his letters, etc. And sometimes you read something, but you don't know really what it is in the main information from the archive of the military. But then you read in his diary, or you see a picture or something else, and then really the puzzle falls into place.
Right.
And then you understand the real entire story from when he was a kid, and then First World War, between the wars, the Second World War, and then his retirement. So being able to really have all the detail of his life, that's pretty unique. I would not even be able to do it for my own life, I would say. So that clarity, that was pretty inspiring. But as I said, it took 10 years, of course, working at Tesla at the same time. It was some night work and weekend work and, in between. But in the end, after 10 years, I'm happy we were able to release the Dutch version 2 years ago, and then the English version last year. And maybe you can explain why we did the English version.
Sure.
Well, the English version, I was always dreaming about a Netflix series or something like that, or a movie.
I love it. I love it.
You
guys have an entrepreneurial mindset. I love it.
Henri was a sort of Winters during the First World War.
Right.
I will give you some examples, like what we found in his diaries and some stories that he told me. Let's do it chronologically.
Chronologically, from the First World.
So he was a teacher in 1913, gave lessons in Ronse, where he was born. But after a year, the First World War broke out, and he, as a volunteer, went to the Belgian army and said, "Look, I want to join as a stretcher bearer," right? And he went to the first battle of the First World War, which was here some kilometers away.
Amazing.
In a small town called Halen. So he had to travel from his hometown over 100 miles to Halen as a stretcher bearer to get all the wounded and killed from the battlefield. And it was the last time that the cavalry fought against each other. So the Belgian and the German cavalry.
Yes. So just real quick, Eric, sorry, for folks listening, the Battle of Holland is typically known as the Battle of the Silver Helmets, due to the then almost Napoleonic, or frankly Napoleonic era cavalry units engaging each other in the fields near Holland in the summer of 1914. It's just incredible. Like other stories from your grandfather that occur later in the timeline of the war, but this is his introduction to war, is this cavalry battle of men in silver helmets with the horsehair plumes, riding into battle on horses, and it's going to be an entirely different world 4 years later. So sorry for that interruption.
No, but then he had to take away all the wounded, those who were killed, but also there were about 400 horses lying dead in the field. And amongst those cavalry troops from the Germans, there was an elite group, the Hussars. You know that?
Yes.
And they had also silver helmets, but the horseshoes also had a layer of silver. And my grandfather took away one of those horseshoes and gave it to me as a present. So I still got it at home here.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And immediately after that, he was sent to the Ypres because the Germans were advancing
Right.
practically as fast as they did in the Second World War. And then they were held back at the Ypres where the flooding took place. And my grandfather was in a little town in the trenches of Steenstraate.
Okay.
And that's where the first gas attack took place. So he survived that as well. And I can literally tell you the story of how he saw this yellow-brown cloud coming, his friends falling down. He had to pee in his handkerchief to run away. So you can literally read it in his journal.
Incredible.
2 days later, he was at the trenches just next town at the Lizerne mill, which was bombed very heavily, and he was buried alive with 2 other stretcher bearers. So everyone thought that they were dead. And my grandfather told this story more than once to me and my father. He said, I woke up. First, I felt my chest coming alive. Then my head, then my hands, my feet, and I started pulling away the sand through the faces of his 2 comrades who had died.
God, wow.
Then one of the other comrades of him helped him out, but he was unconscious for several hours because when he got out of the ground, the moon was up there. So it was already night.
Nighttime, yes.
Then he realized, all right, I'm still alive.
Right. My God.
I think that was like the first year and a half, or not even, in the First World War. So he already had quite some difficult experiences.
Yes.
And then something happened is that the army published a letter requesting all teachers by education to report and to be selected by their superior officers to a training camp in France. And because Henri was from Ronse, which is very close to the French-speaking part of Belgium, he was perfect bilingual. So he spoke Dutch and French, which was a huge plus because at that time French was still the common language in the army, which then put Henri on a fast track to become lieutenant in the Belgian army. So then he spent basically a year going from instruction center to instruction center in France, like instruction center to learn how to use a machine gun, how to command a platoon, all that stuff. And then after a year, which I think was also a little nice rest after being at the front line, after a year of training, he was then sent back to the trenches. And then basically, the trench warfare continued to happen. It was a very long effort, very defensive. There was not a lot of offense towards the Germans. It was more just holding them off. And that's actually because of his long stay. He started almost the first month of the war. And by that time, 1917, 1918, he was there for almost 4 years on the front line. Then he was decorated with the War Cross. So it's this one. He has his first chevron or his first bronze palm mentioned in the army daily orders for his long stay at the front. So that's the first mention of him in the daily orders. And then finally after that, the end of the war was arriving, and it became more like an offensive.
Yes.
War.
So in fact, so for folks listening, for folks who've listened to the podcast for a long time, they, that we've covered the Meuse-Argonne offensive, but the Meuse-Argonne was part of the Allied strategy to hit the Germans all at once. So the British excuse me, the Americans and French were going to attack in the Meuse region and Champagne. The British were going to be attacking with the French in the area of Picardy, and then up north, King Albert was not only going to be the king of Belgium, he was actually also a military commander, and he led the offensive, leading Belgian and British forces to break out of the Ypres salient and the Belgian front line and start pushing the Germans back there. And all of this happened within the last few days of September of 1918. And so those events are gonna transpire to lead Henri to the battle for the Haute-Hulst forest. Did I say that right? Did I get it?
Haute-Hulst, yeah.
Haute-Hulst.
Yeah.
The Haute-Hulst forest. So can you tell us about Henri there?
Yeah, because he told me lots of stories about that period, because I think that was one of his most important contributions to the end of the First World War. He told me more than once, I shook the hand of King Albert at the front. And we, little grandpa, yeah. We didn't believe him. But now we found the diaries, and beginning September, there was a big attack near Houtels, and a lot of Belgian soldiers died there.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't organize a funeral mass every day, so they kept them or buried them for some time, and then after 1 or 2 weeks they did a mass, and then they did a funeral mass for everyone who had fallen those 10 14 days. And since my grandfather was a teacher, they asked him, can you write a funeral speech for those who have fallen?
Mm-hmm.
We can read in his diary, I was asked to write the speech. I was there. I started my speech at the end of the Mass. It seems that King Albert was there with Queen Elizabeth, with all the ministers of Belgium, Minister of War, all the generals were there. And after the Mass, they all came to my grandfather and shook his hand.
Wow.
So you can literally read it. So
yeah, they were
little grandpa was right.
He was right.
Yeah, he wasn't here in English we say he wasn't pulling your leg. He was telling the truth the whole time.
But then referring to your question, at the end of September, let's say 27, 28, 29, King Albert gave a big speech or write a letter to all the Belgian troops that were there. Mm-hmm. Let's try to make a gap, preferably at Houtholst, so that our French and English allied troops can join us to break through the Ypres salient and attack the Germans on their side. Mm-hmm. So my grandfather was one of the leaders of this campaign. He was only 24 years old, I think, at that time. Mm-hmm. Because everyone who was older than him was already shot.
Right.
And at a certain time, it was in the middle of the night, after, I think, 3 hours of heavy bombing, he went through the wire, barbed wire, climbed up to the legendary Hill 44. That was his goal. And there was a machine gun in a very heavily armed bunker on top of the Hill 44, and they couldn't get through. So my grandfather asked his second in command, let's join everyone we got, give all the hand grenades you have, let's divide them between us. So half of it went to the second in command, rest of in the pockets that my grandfather carried. And then they would do a sort of an attack with the rest of the troops, but not a real attack. At Vallavond, hoe zeggen ze dat?
Yeah, they created a diversion at dusk.
There you go.
And then Henri and the second in command.
My grandfather climbed up to the left side, his friend up to the right side, but they spotted him. And they shot with the machine gun, and it hit the back. So the bag exploded.
Ooh.
And my grandfather always said, after we managed to conquer the bunker, we looked for him, for a part of him. We couldn't find anything. He was completely vanished from the earth.
Wow.
But
Oh.
during that explosion, my grandfather quickly climbed up, took one grenade, and put it in the bag and threw it in the slit of the bunker,
Mhm.
killing everyone inside. And then his company was able to break through the German lines. And for that achievement, he got his second
Chevron
on it,
Yeah.
and a very nice quote.
Yeah, in the army.
Maybe you can read that.
Yeah,
while
yeah.
I get the hand grenade.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, so like when he did those actions, a couple of days later, the army orders of the day mentioned his name, and I will just read what they wrote. So it
Sure.
says Langie Henri, second lieutenant, 24th Line, 11th Company, participated together with his unit in 3 consecutive and successful attacks on 28 and 29 September, lasting at least 36 hours. The first was to cross the Houthulst forest. The other 2 were to attack a strongly defended position surrounded by a double network of barbed wire. Henri was always at the head of his unit. He showed great courage, gallantry, and a total disregard for danger, leading his men by his splendid example. So that was extremely nice to read, that we found that. It was very, we're very proud of reading.
Which is interesting because I think I'm not sure if I asked it here. Yeah. So I know from the book that Henri would say, he would tell Eric and his other grandkids, like, oh no, we shot in the air. We tried to get them to keep their heads down. We weren't trying to kill them. Like, obviously this is a very, very different story. Yeah, he was.
It's very different. Also, if you read the beginning of the attack, then he mentions that they prepare themselves for the attack at 2 a.m. at night. They bombard for like 3 hours, and then at 5 or 6 a.m. they move forward. And he says, we take our bayonet and our revolver. We kill everybody that doesn't surrender immediately.
Yep.
So it was really a tough battle, and it was a brutal time in his life.
Right.
And what was interesting is that after one of his own summaries of the Battle of Houthulst, Henri writes that the French army actually already tried before to capture the forest of Houthulst, a couple of times, and they were unsuccessful. And when they finally heard the news that the Belgian army was able to capture it and move even beyond, that they couldn't believe it. So they asked for confirmation 2 or 3 times. Is it actually true that you really captured? Because they were really unbelievable.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
So here it is.
Yep.
They call it a Belgian egg.
A Belgian egg. Yes, it's very egg-shaped. Yes. Oh, incredible.
Terrible.
And here is the bullet.
Yes. That's the one that hit the tree?
Yeah.
Incredible. Wow. That is just so amazing. So amazing. Wow. That's so cool. How impressive that your family still has that in its possession.
Yeah.
So Henri, originally before the First World War, he had trained as a teacher, but not necessarily a military man, but post World War I, he has different ideas, doesn't he? So what was his life like between the wars?
In Weeze, in 1919, he was sent to Weeze, that is a bit above Düsseldorf, Cologne, as part of the occupation troops there. Afterwards, he was sent to Ghent, and then he went
Yeah.
to
And then actually-
the Ardennes.
Yeah, so he had to stay in the army after 1918,
Okay.
in the beginning of 19 as an occupation troop,
Mhm.
and then somewhere towards the summer, the Belgian troops were relieved of duty.
Okay.
But a lot of the soldiers actually applied to become a member of the active military, so to continue a career in the Belgian army, and that's what Henri did. And given his experience and his contributions and already his rank of second lieutenant, somewhere around the end of 1919, he was allowed as a active soldier, as a professional soldier, into the Belgian army. And I think for some reason the military life suited him. There was also a lot of structure, discipline, rules, or to life of a teacher in some regards. So he just continued in that path, and then indeed he was transferred back into Belgium, into his hometown town of Ghent, and then his family life starts taking shape.
He got his two sons, Roger and Etienne, but not so long after that, he was this elite regiment of the Ardennes Hunters.
Okay.
Which he did for 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
and then he was transferred back to Ghent, to the, hoe say it, kazerne? How do you call it?
The Leopold barracks.
The
in
barracks,
Mhm.
Ghent.
Yeah.
Exactly the place where he had to flee with the Belgian army, starting from Ghent to France.
Right.
So
Right.
that was the place where he lived.
Yeah. So I think to summarize, 1919, the war is over. He's on occupation troop. Then he moves back to Ghent. He marries. He trains in the army. He evolves through the ranks. He gets two sons. At that point, we're at the beginning of the 1930s, and then he's transferred to the Ardennes as a captain commander of establishing these two new regiments. But the interesting thing is that when he was in the Ardennes establishing the Ardennes Hunter Regiment, he was not allowed to take his family with him.
Right.
So they lived in Ghent, which was a good 200-300 kilometers, or around 200 miles apart. And at that time, it was like an 8 or 10-hour journey to get from the mountains of the Ardennes into the other side of the country. There, even though he was very successful in establishing the regiment, the separation started to weigh on him. And then he actually wrote a letter directly to the Minister of Defense to ask for his relocation to Ghent, which he was granted. And there he was part of the Leopold barracks for several years. And then towards the end of the 1930s, started to heat up, let's say, in Europe.
Right.
And then the crazy thing is that his second son, Etienne, which is my father's father, my grandfather, he was about to do his first communion.
Second communion,
sorry. And the night that it would happen, the Germans invaded Belgium. And then Henri was lifted from his bed, and everything started all over again.
And my father told me everyone was looking forward to that second communion, the dinner, and he had. My grandfather writes in the diary, the bottle of gin is ready to be served. And when we cleared out his cellar, we found this bottle of gin dated 1939.
Incredible.
So I still got it in my wine cellar.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Wow. Gosh, that's so amazing. So amazing. So as you said, this is May 1940. The Germans invade Belgium. It's like the 18 days campaign. They
indeed
consume all of Belgium. Henri is mobilized, and he and his unit they have to actually retreat from Belgium into France.
Exactly.
So what happens there?
Well, at first they had to leave all the weapons behind. Only my grandfather was allowed to keep his cold government on him, like all the other officers. But all the soldiers had to leave their guns behind.
Interesting.
For the defending troops, but they didn't last long.
Yep.
And then after a long journey to the southern of France, he finally got news from the French army, like, you should move upwards again near France because the Germans are approaching France and we want to have there a sort of a defense line.
Okay.
But at the moment that my grandfather and his brigade arrived there, the French were already...
The Germans
were already in France. So they had to turn back. And the nearest place where they could cross the river Loire was at Orléans.
Orléans.
Yeah. So they had to do 100 kilometers by foot to cross the Loire at Orléans, but the Germans were so quick with their tanks and machines and whatever, and there he was taken prisoner of war, and spent a couple of days at the barracks there. At a certain time, when the Germans had conquered most of France and Holland and Belgium, they said, look, the battle is won. Release all the prisoners of war. But my grandfather and his troops, okay, they were free, but they had to do over 400 kilometers back to Belgium. Most of it he did on foot. Sometimes he had a car or a truck or a boat even, but most of it he did on foot. And these boots are still here in our collection.
Wow, the boots that made
there were nails on the bottom.
Yep, the hobnails. Wow, incredible.
And then he arrived in Ghent with his family again. Did there some work for, maybe you can tell that, what he did for the government.
So it stands still 1940, right? And Belgium is occupied. And then, of course, some jobs still need to be done. Henri, being a soldier, he did not really have a job to do at that time. So then the Germans assigned him as a controller to the agricultural transports by rail. So checking all the produce and, tracking the shipments, the statistics and everything. And because he was a soldier, he had to go every day to the German commandatur to show that he was still there. He was not doing any resistance activity.
Right.
He has not fled to join the resistance or anything.
Yep.
But Henri being Henri, it did not really stop him to do patriotic activities. So he played the good boy. But actually, he passed on a lot of these informations that he had from the rail transports to through the resistance, which then passed that information on to London, just to help with mapping the rail movements, etc. And he also boycotted or stopped some of the orders that they gave, that they were given by the Germans, for example, to arrest certain farmers or things like that. He sort of was, obstructing them in very subtle ways, not to be captured himself. But that took, I think, like 3 or 4 years of living like that until the end of the Second World War, where
the start of D-Day, and then he was captured again.
Then with the help of the American troops, which we are still very grateful for, they started to become more anxious, the Germans, and then they started to arrest everybody that could start to turn against them of the general population.
Yeah, so that's why he's arrested at that point. And then he's sent to a POW camp in like Eastern Germany or Prenzlau.
Near Poland.
Okay.
100 kilometers north to Berlin.
Okay. Yeah. Now, did he, you mentioned earlier, he spoke a lot about his World War I service, but Did he speak much of this time during World War II when he was in the POW camps?
Yeah, well, no, like I said before, he was maybe a bit embarrassed that he couldn't do as much during the Second World War as he did during the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the conditions there were terrible. The food was
Right.
sometimes no food. He writes in his diary, like, today, 1/6 of a bread and some water from a tap somewhere. And he sent letters, lots of letters, but he never received one back.
Yep.
Just, I think one he received back at the end when
After
the
6
Russians,
months,
after 6, 7 months, when the Russians closed in near Berlin. And he describes every day like this commander becomes sick, that commander becomes crazy. They have to lock him up. So it's all written in detail.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that in the letters home, he writes, everything is
Everything
fine
is
here.
fine.
We have no complaints.
Good food.
I have 4 blankets. I'm fine. And then if you read his diary, then it's very
incredible.
cold.
It's
He's
terrible.
losing weight. People are going crazy. The camp also is bombarded once at the end of the war because of the Russians.
Yep.
Then inmates die. And it's just a terrible situation where he spent like 9 months of his life without any news from home.
Wow.
Where his wife and children are in occupied Belgium. He doesn't know if they're alive, are they well, and the other way around. They don't know if Henri is still alive. So,
Mike, afterwards, it's always easy to say he was there for 9 months. But when you're there in the first month and you don't know if there will be a second or a third or fourth or 20 months, 5 years, like what's happening in Ukraine right now, people don't know when it will end. At some day, we will say, oh, the Ukraine war lasted for 5.5 years. Okay, that's a period. But
Sure.
they don't know how long it will take, and that's mentally very stressful.
Yes, understood. Yeah, absolutely.
At a certain point, the Russians started bombarding near Prenzlau, where the camp was, and the Germans took all the prisoners of war on a death march for several kilometers, like 40 kilometers in one day. As you imagine the condition that my grandfather was in, and you had to walk for day and night. My grandfather told me, I couldn't believe him. He said, we were walking, 3. One in the middle was sleeping, and the other 2 were marching. And the one in the middle was marching as well, but he was asleep.
Wow.
And then at a certain time, they would swap up and they swapped. And then the other in the middle started sleeping.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And there was practically no food during that march. So they had sometimes to eat mold that was rotting, food that wasn't good. They had to drink out of creeks
streams
and streams, whatever they could find. And it took a couple of days before the Russians eventually stopped the Germans and released the prisoners of war. And then you would say, okay, he's free, he can get back to Ghent, to his home place. No, they took him back to Prenzlau, to the prisoner camp. And they said, tomorrow there will be a truck bringing you to the station, and you can go back to Belgium by train. Yeah.
Wow.
4 weeks he had still to stay there.
Yep.
And getting diarrhea, problem with the lungs, with the bad food and water. He got big sores on his legs that had to be cut open every 2 days.
Oof. Wow.
So it was, but he didn't tell us much about that period. We just had to read it in his diaries.
Yeah.
And eventually, he got on the train with all of his comrades. And even then, it took over a week by train to go from the Polish border to his hometown, Ghent. Over a week on several trains. And he describes every city that he passes, like Hamburg, completely destroyed. Osnabrück, completely destroyed. So Lüneburg, completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So eventually he arrives back in Ghent.
And actually,
liberated.
The war is already over by that time. So in May 45, the war is over in Europe.
Yep.
And then I think by somewhere beginning of July, he finally is able to make it home with all those troubles. And then, actually, sort of his career, his military career is very close to being over. So all the soldiers that were coming back from being a prisoner of war, they were given 3 months leave.
Mm-hmm.
But my great grandfather, I think he was 53 or 54 at that time, so close to the age to retire. A couple of months after his 3 months leave, they put him on retirement, which I think is well deserved after all the efforts he went through.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then as like a final, let's say, cherry on the cake, he was promoted to honorary major, which actually he should have been promoted a lot sooner. But because of the war, a lot of the promotions were put on hold and were not being reviewed. But then once he was back, they finally gave him the recognition and promoted him to honorary major, which he was super proud of. Having started as just a volunteer in the army, then making it to the rank of major, it was quite something.
That's incredible. So he's finally April 1946. He retires and he's completed his military service. And what was the rest of his life like?
Well, he was a real family man. So he had his villa at the sea, his house in Ghent. And apart from the normal gatherings like Christmas or whatever, we would go with all the family. Every year we went during the summer holidays, we went to a village called Oost-Duinkerke.
Okay.
I don't know if you know where it is. It's a bit north to Calais.
But I think
on the Belgian border.
Dunkirk, right?
Dunkirk. Mm-hmm.
So it's quite close.
Yeah,
Dunkirk, I figured, right?
West and East Dunkirk is where he had his villa.
It's Belgium.
Okay.
That's where we found his helmet from the First World War.
Oh man,
this color. And when we were there with me and my two elder brothers and my niece, he kept eye on us at the coast side with his binoculars from 1914.
amazing.
Yeah, and he was a proud man. So he was sitting in this folding chair, full in costume, with tie, looking with his glasses and his bald head like Poirot, looking at us if everything was okay. And then, he had in Ghent, he had a greenhouse where he cultivated grapes. It's a tradition that I took over. I still have his, we call it scissors or what, to cut
his cheers. Mm-hmm.
Cheers.
And he didn't make wine, but he collected wine. So I have a collection of wines from him starting 1955. He even got a bottle of 1942, still full.
Whoa.
Yeah. So he had green fingers. He loved being in nature, loved meeting people, driving around with his Chevrolet Stylemaster, and loved smoking a cigar.
Okay, well deserved.
Grandchildren would often steal, when we were about 14, 15 years old, we would steal some cigars from them. And in the dunes of Oost-Duinkerke, we would smoke. And we still got some left that Tom and I, sometimes we take one cigar of Henri to smoke in his honor.
Yeah.
And then he became a secretary of an association about food producers in Flanders. let's say, the ones that he used to take care of during his period in the Second World War.
Okay. Okay.
And he was member of several friend groups like Second Company, Fourth Line, and kept on giving speeches on funerals of comrades who died, writing history, not history books, but notes about the Battle of Halen, the First World War, the gas attacks. And he would, lecture them everywhere, where everyone.
He was still very passionate about like the war and the army and the fraternities, etc.
Right.
And actually,
Lifelong connection.
and actually, one of his sons, Etienne, my grandfather, he was a major medic in the army, and when he had to attend official meetings and events,
or had a promotion,
which was strictly usually for the army folks, then Henri would sometimes sneak in together with Etienne, and then was of course greeted with a lot of respect and interest because of the stories and his experiences that he lived through. But that was quite funny when we learned that.
Wow. So you guys have the Langie family. You guys have a connection to the Order of Leopold. This is a Belgian award, but it's very prominent in your family. Eric, can you tell us about it?
Well, it's the highest and the oldest order in Belgium. It was founded by the first king of the Belgians, Leopold, in 1832, mostly to military. So that's why Henri became that order. My father became that order. And 2 years ago, I was also appointed knight in this order of Leopold. So that means that 3 generations of Langies in a row have received this honor. So
Incredible.
That's quite special.
Yeah. Oh, that's
so
incredible.
now I am a member to the Royal Society of the Order of Leopold, which is affiliated with the French order Légion d'honneur. You know that.
Legion of Honor.
Yeah. And the president of our society is the king. And I met the king, Philip, our current king, more than once because, like you told in the beginning, I did a lot of concerts and special projects. And many times I had someone from the court attending or the court asking me to organize something for them. And that's why they gave me as a civilian also this honor. They also gave it to Hendrik Gerard, who managed to flood the Ypres salient at the beginning. He was also a knight in the Order of Leopold as a civilian.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah, and I see you make mention here that for you made the comparison to the Légion d'honneur in France and also to the Order of the British Empire in the UK.
The British Empire, or the Order of the British Empire. In fact, Leopold I, a bit of history. Leopold the first king, he lived in England, as you know. He married a first French lady, and then came to Belgium as the first king. And he immediately, 2 years after the founding of the state of Belgium, he started his own order, the Order of Leopold. And in England, they were a bit jealous, and they said, we should have an order like that as well. And so I think more than 50 years later, I think it was King George, he said, look, I'm going to start something like Leopold in Belgium did. I will start the Order of the British Empire.
Oh, interesting.
So when I go to England, they must say, Sir Eric.
Very cool. Very cool. Wow. My goodness.
Do you have something like that in the US, Mike?
I'm going to say no. Not. I mean, we have the. I know there is the Presidential Medal of Freedom that's given by the president. But I have to be honest. I don't know enough to speak about it. I don't know if it compares well to the Ovary and the Order of Leopold.
State medal will be that one that you managed, and then the Medal of Honor. In England, Medal of Honor is like the Victoria Cross.
Yes, it's military. Yeah,
that's pure military.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. Wow. All right. So we're on to our final question, and so Henri, what do you want people to remember from his story?
I think, he was extremely resilient and positive, even in the toughest of times. So I think that's super inspiring. I think that can help people in these days, that even if you have a tough day, if you read the diary, it's very easy to forget how tough your day is, because life can be extremely tough if you read his diary, like not knowing if your parents are still alive and things like that. So I think that can definitely help. And I think in a broader perspective, as long as we can, keep remembering all the courage and the discipline and the sacrifices that those young men made, especially the ones that didn't survive. Henri was lucky enough to survive. I think that would be a good thing if we can keep carrying on the lessons from the past. There's a lot of wisdom from the past and a lot of inspiration that we can pull from it. And we now live in a free world because of the joint efforts of the Allied forces. So it was a team effort. I think it would be cool if we continue to be a team.
Yes.
Keep the connections going overseas, like we're doing today. I think.
Right. Absolutely.
But the main thing, we don't ever want such a terrible war on such a grand scale to take place again. Even though some of these stories are very heroic and they sound cool, I think if all those folks could choose for it not to happen, they would immediately say yes.
Absolutely. Like I was speaking the other day about the United Nations and the idea behind it, and I was like, after World War I and especially after World War II, United Nations, was created, after the failure of the League of Nations, but the idea was that let's talk things out before it becomes a shooting war, because at that point everybody loses, as we can see. Like it's Henri was definitely a hero, and he served very honorably and very heroically in the war. But like I'm sure, he wouldn't have, like, what if he had just been a teacher all of his life? Like how amazing, right there as well. So amazing. Wow. Well, thank you both so much for coming on and having this absolutely fantastic conversation about Henri Langie, who is, I feel he's been with us there and the whole time. Like this has been such a great conversation. And
he didn't correct us, so everything we told was true.
No mistakes. And I mean, it's all, and I'm sure, he's looking down on us and saying like, it's all in the diaries. Like, trust me.
It's all in there.
Oh, that's super cool. So I will, if you guys have a link to the book in English, or if you have an anticipated publication date, share it with me, and I'll make sure I'll share it as widely as
pictures.
I'll send some pictures. The link to the book.
Perfect. And I hope that perhaps even this summer we can meet in person and have a drink in honor of Henri. So
that would be awesome. Yeah. Great.
Oh, fantastic.
Thanks to you as well, Mike.
Thanks for your
great time.
attention.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation.